Yo, what's up, guys? My name is Philip Jean-Marie. I play Matt Cooper, Power Rangers Wild Force. You're watching Action Activate. Let's
Here we come, there they go. People rise, 'cause they know we're super soldiers. We got cool clothes. You will soon, you see our pose. Tension, energize, mask on. Time to ride. Combine, grease ties.
Welcome. I am Gazbot. This is Action Activate. And if I am Gazbot and this is Action Activate, well then, with me as always.
It is the big dog, here to talk about something we haven't talked about in a little while, which is a new video from Unworthy. We are on the cutting edge, breaking news kind of review.
Like a month and a half late. Yeah.
This is the Microsoft Edge of reviews. Breaking news. Will Smith just slapped Chris Rock.
For us.
Yeah, but we're talking about Ninjor's Oath, which is the newest Unworthy episode. It's kind of
sort of
like a side story.
Yes, it's set in the Unworthy Power Rangers Unworthy universe, but it is not an official episode. It's a
Correct.
Episode. In the notes they talked about in the show notes, their show notes, I should say.
Yep.
They said they're considering this part one of the Endgame trilogy. And so this is part one, and it is connected to that universe, but it's its own little thing. If you didn't watch this, presumably you could you could still watch the regular episodes and you'd understand. Then the next part is the Psycho Menace, which they've been working on, which they've been teasing stuff about, which is all about Psycho Rangers. And then the third part, and that's another side story. And then the third part of Endgame is episode 5 of Unworthy, like the proper episode 5, which they said will be out in 2023, which at first I was like, oh man, that's not for a while. Then I'm like, oh, it's the middle of November. Right. That'll be pretty soon. Especially if Psycho Menace comes out between now and then, which is the implication.
Yeah, I've been seeing them post a lot of things from the filming of it.
Right.
And yeah, I mean the set looks cool for it.
Well, yes, it looks cool, but I'm wondering if it's going to be a situation where I think the last episode came out about a year ago. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, so the last episode came out about a year ago. Now we have Ninjor's Oath, and then potentially Psycho Menace in like a month, and then potentially episode 5 a month after that. So it's like a year of nothing, and then 3 in a row, which is awesome, and I'm happy to get 3 in a row. But it's like, wow, that stinks that they couldn't space it out or get one out earlier. And I understand why, because they probably have all the production together and they're just doing it all at the same time. But it's crazy. It's like feast or famine over here.
Yeah, I was gonna say it reminds me, and I'm sure there's some semblance of this where kind of like the final Avengers movies, it was, here's the big one, you've waited 3 years for it, by the way, part 2's in a year. You're like, what?
Yeah.
So that's how I'm seeing this, is they're taking their time on it, but it's like, wait, don't wait any longer, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Which I'm all for. I'd rather do the long wait and then get all this than like, man, that was cool, we're going to find out how this ends in 3 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think maybe it would make more sense. And we don't know how they're spacing it out. The impression I got was they're going to come out quick. But if they were spaced out like every 3 months or 4 months or something, that might make more sense for like the YouTube algorithm and getting views and stuff. But as a creator, I know when you have something done, you don't want to sit on it for 3 months or 6 months. You want to get it out there. So, well, let's get it out there. Let's talk about this episode of Unworthy Productions of Unworthy Power Rangers, which is Ninjor's Oath. Now, we start off with the theme song. I forgot how much I like this theme song.
I know, it's great, huh?
And the footage, it's just like a music video for the full song. I think it's like a 10-minute video, and the first 2 minutes is this song, which on the one hand, I'm like, oh man, that's 2 minutes of footage we're not getting. But I'm not really complaining, because it's a cool song, and they now have so much footage to draw from. It's like a greatest hits reel of everything we've seen before.
Yeah.
And also a good recap, if you haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah. All I'm reminded of during
Black Friday deals, everybody.
Hey, there you go. I'm reminded how OP the Arbiter is.
Yeah. I mean, by design, it's not like, but
yeah. As we kind of get into it without going into the story, what were your initial impressions other than this?
Not talking about the intro, my initial impressions or my overall impressions?
What are your initial thoughts of the overall thing you just watched?
I'll give you two.
Okay.
And they kind of conflict. There was less to it than I thought there would be, and I liked it more than I thought I would.
I agree with those.
That. You do? Okay.
I think this was the most anime episode they've ever done.
Yes, which I'm not. That's not a bad thing.
And not a complaint, but like in every sense of the word, this was the anime episode.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't watch, as we talked before, with as much as we can with any Power Ranger production, Hasbro or otherwise. We're not the type that are like following too close. Like we follow these accounts, but I'm not like reading every update. I don't really want to see the actor interviews. I want to just see it and then find out myself. So I haven't really paid attention. I knew it was coming. I've seen the suit because it's been in other things and whatever. But I didn't really want to know what it was about. But I had imagined that there'd be more connective story tissue, that there'd be like Ninjor did something and like there's something, and that might come into play later in episode 5, and that's fine. But so as it was going on, I'm like, oh, they're just kind of getting right into it, and there's and I don't mean this as an insult, because I'll put it this way: I'll say there's not a lot of writing to it. That's not true. There's not a lot of story to it. There is a lot of writing because there's a lot of dialogue and things like that I have no issue with and is fine quality. But it really is just a glorified fight scene. That being said, it is a great glorified fight scene. It
is like going back to kind of the anime parallels. It was like all anime exposition where it was like while we're fighting or before we're fighting, we're talking about all of our thoughts and feelings and plans.
Yeah. And it's done well though. I think some of it is a little bit repetitive, especially with the Arbiter explaining who he is and stuff, because we've heard him do that. But if someone, it didn't bother me because it's like, this is the guy. It's the same way, like it's almost as much of a catchphrase as the like run, fight, it doesn't matter. Like him being like, here's why I'm here. And it's kind of like, that's what this guy has to say when he shows up, because he's destroyed so many people in so many realities. He's got to let them know because they don't know who he is. And if this is the only episode you've watched, I guess it lets you know. But
this is one of those things where it reminds me of like when we've worked conventions together and you or I will have like either a joke we'll say or like a point we want to make, or we've heard somebody else say it from a different table. And it's like, I am part of the grid and you will you're unworthy and all this. And it's like, for him, he like loves it and he will say it 100 more times. Whereas if you've heard it 3 times, you're like, yeah, I know they're unworthy and yeah, and you're this. Yep. I know. So I thought that was funny where it's like, to your point of, oh, I've killed a bunch of Ninjors and I've said this speech 1,998 times. So let me tell you something. It doesn't get old.
Yeah. The other thing I want to touch upon, and I think we've said this in other Unworthy, or even because they loaned the suit to Crimson Vision for one of their ninja ones.
For Rise of the Ninja.
Rise of the Ninja. Yeah. I like this suit. I am not.
Yes, I really do too.
Fan of redesigns. Now, that's not like the Unworthy Power Rangers. That's a redesign, but they're supposed to be like different universe, whatever. And I guess this Ninjor might be from a different universe. But generally speaking, I like things to be classic. And this is very classic, except they kind of slimmed them down. They made him look more like he could fight. And indeed, we see that he can fight. I like it. I like the redesign.
Yeah.
If they made a figure and it came out like, in the Lightning Collection, it came out looking like this Ninjor, I wouldn't be that upset. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be like, oh, this is great. It looks like him and it sounds like him. The voice actor they got, it sounds just like the original Ninjor, more or less. And going back to like, I started to say something like there isn't a lot of writing, which isn't what I intended to say, because the dialogue, we've seen the Arbiter, we know what he sounds like, but the Ninjor dialogue and just the way he acts, everything is pitch perfect. Yeah. It's this perfect mix of the corny goofball over the top Ninjor that a lot of people hate. I love, but he's a competent fighter and he's not too goofy. He's a little bit more Spider-Man, a little less Bulk and Skull,
yeah.
And I think the way they portrayed Ninjor as a character was great.
I know we've talked about this before for both the Unworthy stuff and for other YouTube Power Ranger projects as well, but it really reminds me, like Ninjor specifically in this, really reminds me of when Marvel, I think it was like 20 years ago now, did their Ultimate line, where it was like, it's the same core characters, but just starting from today.
Yes.
And like, this is what that reminded me of everything you know and love and remember is there, but it's not dumbed down for you and outdated.
Right. Yes. Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
So I appreciated that.
Yeah, and they set that tone right away because he says whatever he says. I forget what he says, like, you think whatever, I'm Ninja. And he does his little Ninjor. But then the Arbiter's like, I'm going to finish you. And he disappears. He's like, and catches the blade. And I'm like, that sets the tone for the whole thing.
Yep.
He is kind of a goofball, but he can fight. He knows what he's doing, you know. And I was like, yeah, that's great.
And it was interesting because in the beginning, it did a lot of good up and down. Where like in the beginning, I'm like, is Ninjor about to dust the Arbiter? And then he didn't.
I honestly, I didn't think he would defeat the Arbiter, like he would vanquish him, destroy him, whatever.
Yeah.
I thought he might win the fight.
Yeah.
I thought he would, like, the Arbiter would be like, I'll deal with you next time, or, you know, one of those.
Yeah.
Things. And then, and we're kind of jumping ahead, then I got worried. I'm like, is Arbiter going to kill Ninjor? Because Arbiter kills everybody. But I was a little bit more invested in this one than some of the others.
Yeah.
Because like, we're like, oh, he might have a chance. We've been watching him fight for 6 minutes. And, you know, and so like, yeah, it was quote unquote just a fight, but I was invested.
Yeah, there were real like implications. I feel like this is kind of that calm before the storm for episode 5, where it was like, not that everybody else is weak, but Ninjor is a different kind of dude. And this is kind of that litmus test of, okay, one-on-one, you guys are going back and forth. It's a lot less one-sided. So now if we all come together, what's it going to look like?
It'll be believable if Ninjor gets a team together. Yeah, especially if he's like, take some of my power, you know, then
yeah, I did like, again, jumping ahead, we see the back and forth. The fights itself were really cool.
Camera work too. Like, like technically the special effects look good. And like, technically I have almost no complaints. Everything looks good.
Yeah. To me, one thing that I think made Unworthy stand out so much is they did everything within their means. And we say this a lot about the Nerdbot projects as well, where there are instances where you could falter and try to do too much, and they stay within the line so well that everything keeps you invested. And it's not like, kind of like we've talked about in regular Power Rangers, where, you know, we're watching, and then somebody turns into a balloon and you're like, well, there it went.
Yeah. But I'll even go a step further, and they're not crossing those lines, but they're also seemingly aware of what they can and can't do. And because I've been critical of several of these fan products and, you know, official Power Rangers stuff, when like the CGI is kind of weak or like something, like why'd they do that? And I was wondering, because there's a few, as they say, anime moments where Ninjor's like, then he's like, I'm going to power up, and he glows and does a punch or gets energy. And I'm like, is he going to turn into Ninja Man at some point?
And I felt like so too.
And I wasn't sure if I wanted to see that or not, because I'm like, that could be bad. That could look dumb. Is he going to grow? And part of me wants to see it, but part of me is like, is that going to look? And they didn't. And I think it was probably the right choice. And maybe in the episode proper, he will, and maybe they'll figure out a way to make it work, you know, but like, I'm satisfied with this version of Ninjor and not transforming further.
Yeah, I always thought this version looked cooler, even though the other was more powerful. But the thing that I found cool was Arbiter keeps talking about, like, you know, you have a special connection to the grid because you made the power coins and you did this and you did that. And this is the first time I've seen in both comic or the show where Ninjor really shows how he has a different connection to the morphing grid. And I really appreciated that little extra attention to detail, because you could be like, I have super ninja powers, here you go, which he did at times. But this was like, here is how I harness stuff that I gave to other people, but now I get it for me. And
and all of it, not a portion of it.
Yeah.
But also, I also appreciate that it was a ramp up. He didn't start off with that. He's like, I'm going to use regular abilities. Okay, I'm going to power up a little bit. And it wasn't until he's like, okay, you know what? You require my full power. So here we go. Like,
yeah. And I did like, from a technical aspect, when he, and again, we're jumping ahead, he harnesses the power of the animals of the Ninjetti.
Yes.
And when he does that, I appreciated all the like pauses they did for each move, and everything looked technically like good from a martial arts perspective, which again, I'm more critical of in some of these.
I don't know what's correct. I know what looks good, and it looks good.
It looked good. And again, I don't know style wise what would be correct and what wouldn't, because this isn't a style I studied, but like, it was good, and it reminded me when he kept doing them slow of the hallway scene in The Matrix, where he like does the sidekick and moves it and like did a punch and held and did this thing, and I'm like, oh, that looks so cool.
You know what's funny is they were talking about him being the last Ninjetti, like they use that term specifically.
Yeah.
And I was mixed up for a minute, and I was like, wait, is this going to tie into? And I'm like, oh, no, that was another series in another country that is no longer happening. But like, especially because the way they show the ninja animals, and like they did that a lot in that one, and I totally was connecting things that don't connect. But you know, if they ever start making stuff again and can hook up with this,
I was going to say, a man can dream. I know we saw in the comments there was, obviously some behind the scenes parts that are difficult to film and things like that. But even if you just get one back, it still counts.
Yeah.
Come back for that final battle in front of a green screen or in a park,
have them knock down Ninjor and say something like "Last Ninjetti" and then like that, like blue or pink or something.
Or just like do this and then let the special effects do the talking, Yeah,
exactly. So he gives it his best shot. He gets and I also like the way they have the animals, but like he kind of powers up with their color for each one. It's a lot of fun. And then Arbiter's like, okay, the power protects you no longer, and it kind of flips that, and then he stabs him. And I was like, oh no, he's getting him. And I thought he was done, but he's like, ooh, and again, very anime. You deflected the killing blow, impressive, but it'll get you nothing. Paraphrasing here. This is not a critique. But when I saw this, I saw like the energy and there was like a spark and stuff. And then I saw the blood and that threw me off. Only because I always assumed Ninjor was either a robot or some kind of spiritual
entity.
Thing encased in arm. Yeah, like a golem, an entity. Never in a million years would I think that he had some kind of flesh and blood under there. I don't know what the canon is. I could be wrong, But when I saw that, and not because there's blood, because this is a more mature series, we've seen blood. But I was like, Ninjor bleeds? And if he did, I thought it would be like black or green or white or I don't know. The fact that he had red blood just surprised me, I guess.
One thing I forgot to mention when they're doing their back and forth verbally, I did like how Arbiter said something and then Ninjor referenced his brother, which I thought was a really good nod to when we see NinjaCon at some point.
Yeah, I thought he was going to show up in this one when he made that reference, to be honest.
How awesome would that have been, a tag team match?
I thought it would be a thing where he'd show up and be, because I get the impression they don't like each other, and he'd be like, you sicken me, brother, but this guy, he's even worse than you. One of those kind of like very WWF or WWE, I should say.
Yeah.
And I also like that I think it was after he gets stabbed, he brings out the evil makes me so angry. Evil makes me so angry. And then he gets his like Ninjor Hidoken / Kamehameha.
Yeah.
Saying that. I'd be bad in Dragon Ball world. And then they kind of ends with like, hey, look what I'm gonna do. And then I don't want to get a strike here, but like, yeah, it's like, here it comes, boosh, and it fades to white. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because if this was a one-off, like, because like this is what we saw a lot, and you still see it sometimes, but it used to be more of a thing. Like, look, I did Batman versus Predator. That's all it is. Or like a Bat in the Sun or somebody versus somebody. Like it kind of could end here because like, and the battle continues. But these are both characters that are part of the bigger universe. So like, how are they leaving it like that exactly? But then they do like 3 mid-credit scenes where it's like, oh, he does hit him with it, and he's blasting him. And we should actually, I guess, Jordan Barnett once again doing like most everything: director, camera writer, editor. He's not one of the actors this time, but well, actually he is at the end.
Technically, yeah.
But I was momentarily confused, and maybe I don't know if you were or not, because he looks like he's hitting the Arbiter, and it's not going so well, and the Arbiter kind of pushes him back, and now he's here, kind of catching his breath at a tree, and then he sees like a glowing thing. By the way, I never noticed there was metallic flecks to his armor until this shot, which is kind of cool. Kind of like an auto paint sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he looks over and there's a portal. And so I was like, it took me, I had to go back, but I'm like, I guess he or someone else opened that portal so that he could get to the Rangers from the Unworthy universe. Right?
I took it as, and again, I don't remember the Unworthy universe's designator. I thought it was also Earth 218.
218, yeah.
Which he's in, and they made a point of saying you're a Ninjor from Earth 218. So maybe it's just a portal like within the same plane which
Okay.
might be easier. But either way, I took it as it was probably Chrono Ranger being like, I'd sensed a disturbance in the force, let me get you kind of thing.
And that's fine. And then you see him training them, and you see Blue being like, whoa, I'm having a goofy moment, which is nice after all the heaviness. Just a little subtle thing. It didn't bother me too much. But it took me a second because the portal is kind of like a whitish blue glowing energy, and so was his power, and so was so it's sort of like, wait, is he getting hit? Is that the Arbiter? What is that? So it took me a minute to realize what had happened, I guess. And part of that's because they're intercutting it with the credits.
Yeah,
I figured it out.
He does the blast, fades to white. It didn't work. There's a big explosion. Then Ninjor's like, and I darted away.
Right. And I guess the question is like, why didn't the Arbiter follow? But maybe he's like, I'll let him go. He'll lead me to the other. Whatever.
It makes no difference.
It was fine. Yeah, it makes no difference. There you go. You solved it. Ninja Steel. I figured it out. But it was one of those things where I watched it and then rewound it once just to see.
Yeah.
And then they say Ninjor will return in episode 5, which he will. And there's Walmart again because you got to get paid from the YouTube.
You've been searching Walmart way too much if this is all that's popping up on your end.
Walmart and Best Buy. I think the other one was Best Buy.
Okay.
But yeah, no, like I said, I kind of expected it to have more deep themes or narrative structure or connection to the bigger story than it did, based on nothing. Just that's what I thought it would have. And so when it started and it wasn't that, I'm like, oh, it's just a fight scene. But by the end, I was like, Ninjor. So yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm again excited to see more of this stuff just because we know for the main Power Ranger series we're following, this and Shattered Past, like they're both at that same point of the next episode's the big finale, and you're like, right. Okay, when is it?
Yeah. Well, we have a tentative date for I think for both. For this, certainly, I can't remember what.
I think they're finishing Shattered Past episode 6 from the updates I've seen, but I don't know. Either way, shout out to Nerdbot and shout out to Unworthy. Go watch their stuff if you haven't already. Part of the reason you're here is because you probably watched some or both. So thank you.
Next week, I'm not sure what we're doing. If nothing else comes up, we'll probably continue the Lightning Collection list that we were supposed to do last time when we ranted instead. Unless something else pressing comes up. That's sort of our when there isn't news or a new video or something to cover, we're gonna do that 1 or 2 more times, and then we may or may not start a new series. We're not sure, but I'll throw this out there too. Giveaway stuff. We have passed 300. We are due for another giveaway. I will do that. I just haven't gotten to it, but I haven't forgotten. So if you're not subscribed, do it because we're going to be doing the giveaway.
And for the giveaway, correct me if I'm wrong, but to make things easier, you're going to make a giveaway video, and then to be entered, you're going to comment and like and subscribe in the giveaway video.
That's exactly right, because I have had people win that I have no way of contacting and who don't contact me, and that it's weird when I'm trying to give stuff away and I can't do it.
You're like, hello, can I please send you things?
Yes. Oh, one last little thing I'll say, just because it's a short episode and this is Ranger related. I was at the park today, and there was the family there, and it was mostly little kids and an adult. But then there was a girl who I'm gonna guess was like 12,
who turned into a putty.
She did, but the putty still had like a skirt on, and it was weird. Anyway,
must have been Sentai footage.
Yeah, and somehow Power Rangers came up. I didn't bring it up. Somehow it came up, and I was like, oh yeah, I watch Power Rangers, I like Power Rangers, whatever. And then the girl was like, oh, you like Power Rangers? I like Power Rangers, which struck me as odd. She's just like, I don't know, I don't see a lot of that age kids, usually little kids or older people. But she was like 11, 12, whatever. I'm like, and I happen to be wearing this shirt, and it's not like every shirt I have is Power Rangers, but I was like, oh yeah. And she's like, whoa, you really like Power Rangers? I'm like, yeah. And then she started talking to me, and she's like, oh, like this and that. And she's like, I've been watching. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen a bunch of seasons. And she's like, what's your favorite season? And I'm like, well, I don't know if you've seen this one, Jungle Fury. She's like, that's my favorite season. And then I said, I was like, yeah, check this out. And it was the best reaction I've ever got. She was like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. It was like the absolute best reaction I could have gotten for having that tattoo ready. Like, what are the chances that this kid?
It was like the best validation you could be of like, well, since you answered correctly.
Yes.
Show me what they won.
Yeah, and then we talked about it a bit more, and she was saying how she hasn't seen every season, but she listed like 6 or 7 seasons. I'm like, man, I haven't even seen every season. And then somehow or other, Campbell Cooley came up, and I was like, yeah, you do a lot of these conventions. Because I was telling you should go to a convention. There's local conventions near us. that aren't big, that aren't expensive, and these actors will show up at, and I said, I've done a lot as an artist, and I've met some, they're all cool people, and some of them I've become kind of friendly with. I'm like, Campbell Cooley. I'm like, oh, you might not know his name, but do you know Slide? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, he voiced Slider. She's like, oh, and I'm like, and Snide. She's like, Snide, because she loves Dino Charge. I'm like, yeah, well, I kind of know Snide, but anyway. So yeah, to this 12-year-old girl, I was pretty special.
You were Mr. Big Time, or whatever the name was from Sex and the City.
Oh, Mr. Big.
There you go.
But it made me, it was a fun interaction, but it made me feel good that, like, oh, there are kids, even preteens or, middle schoolers that are still getting into Power Rangers. And she got into it with Dino Charge. So it's that thing of, like, where people were like, oh, all the new stuff is terrible. Like, whatever, every season is somebody's first season. Everybody's got a favorite, It doesn't matter what you think of it. So there you go.
Yeah. Speaking of Ranger stuff from our personal lives, on Wednesdays, I usually play, card games with some buddies, and we play Digimon a lot, but one of the guys who we play with has played like most card games. So he's like, hey, did you ever play the Mega Force card game? I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, me neither. So anyways, here's the Forever Red. He showed me, and it's all blinged out and everything, and it looks cool. And he's like, yeah, he was saying that it only had like 3 sets in America, and the 4th was only overseas. But he was saying, like, yeah, the problem was, like, people really liked the game, but then they went, this is my assumption, is, oh, Mega Force is over. No one cares about these cards anymore. We need to sell you keys. So they kind of left it. And within that amount of time, they're like, oh, well, this is the best deck. Hands down, nothing can beat it. And it happened to be Forever Red, which I thought was funny. So funny. I just looked, and it was like Jason with the Tyranno armor. All of the Forever Red Rangers in one card. All the rest of them in another card. And, like, and then like super ninja mode for Jaden, and there was one other thing with Troy, and I'm like, all those look cool. I assume they're very good in the game.
I have a lot of Mega Force cards.
I remember we got them at that store, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of loose ones at that store, and but I also got the American Morpher that came with a bunch. I had picked up a couple promo ones. Like, I have a Green Ranger, Red Ranger, Mighty Morphin that I got from Comic-Con before I ever even owned them. Like, it was the thing I picked up there.
Yeah.
And one year for Christmas, I got 1 or 2 of those box sets he's talking about. And, like, so I just have a lot. And I've never played the game, but I just had them. I still do. But it is funny that, like, they were treating it like, yeah, that's this year's gimmick, where they inadvertently maybe created a game that could sustain itself and continue, but they're like, well, no, we're done. And like,
yeah, that's how I took it, because I'm like, 3 sets, they come out with 1 a quarter. I'm like, yep, there's the timeline.
Yeah. Anyway, we've rambled enough. There's your ramble. If you just wanted the ramble, there you go. But,
that was the bonus for everybody. But until next time, I am the big dog.
Who am I?
I'm the one who remains. He who remains.
He who remains. What is that from?
Loki.
Oh, thank you. I caught up on Doctor Who this last week. I'm completely caught up.
And?
I think season 2 might be my favorite season of the 3 seasons of the that I don't like. It reminds me of the end of Capaldi, where it reminds me of Capaldi, where I like the actor more than I like the episodes.
Yeah,
Capaldi had like some hit and some miss, and like a couple good ones, and I feel like I don't know what's going on there, but I wouldn't mind if they kept Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah,
got rid of Chris Chibnall, because Jodie Whittaker is not the problem. Chris Chibnall is the problem. And so he's leaving, and I'm like, great. And I would have liked to have seen her stay for a season with Russell T. Davies to give her a chance with that, but whatever. But here's the other thing. I've gotten so many spoilers. And I was like, well, finally I'm caught up. And I watched the last episode. None of those spoilers are in that episode. So just like Power Rangers, I'm getting spoilers for stuff that isn't even out yet. Great. Love it. Anyway, but you're not missing much. You could skip it. You could skip all of it.
Good to know. I'm still on season 5. No, season 3.
Wait, that's Tim. Tim. There's no Tim.
That's 10. I'm in the middle of 10.
Wait, you never finished David Tennant?
No.
You're never gonna watch Doctor Who again. if you can't finish David Tennant,
I didn't. And then we're actually gonna end the show. The reason I didn't finish is I was watching it on a service. I don't remember which one. I think it was Netflix. And then it got taken down. And I'm like, what?
Yeah,
and then it was
been put up and down several services since then.
I know, but I never did the jump back. I just stopped when it ended for me, and then I'm like, eventually I will find it and go back. And then since then I found it, but it's kind of like saying, and no new media came out since then. Well, now my backlog's even bigger. So
Yeah, true. I guess I would say for anyone who wanted to is like watch Tennant, watch Matt Smith. Capaldi, there's some you could skip. Jodie Whittaker, there's some you don't want to skip. Like it's a very short list, unless you're a completist. But okay, we gotta go. Goodbye. I did the opening credits first.
that's all right.
But yeah, I was just powering through and thinking like I'm gonna get to this big crazy spoilery thing that's happening.
And you
Never
didn't.
even got it. Never even got it.
Yeah, I still need to watch Andor. That's how far behind I am on current stuff.
I have not watched Andor either. I wanted to catch up on Doctor Who because surprisingly, I'm not getting Andor spoiled. Like I know it's out and people are saying it's good.
Yeah.
Nothing has been spoiled. Whereas Doctor Who,
Same.
I keep getting spoilers. I think the next show I'm watching, not because I want to, is House of Dragons. I have no interest in watching it. But
I
I
have
will
zero
get
interest in watching
watch
either.
it. The only satisfaction I get is that we're going to follow up Doctor Who with a show that stars a previous Doctor Who. So there's some connective tissue. But having watched Rings of Power and loving it, like it was so much better than I thought it was going to be. I'm like, what are the chances that the other fantasy show that I already don't want to watch is going to be as good as that? Unlikely. But
Low.
we'll see.
Very low.
Goodbye.